Welcome to today's lesson on equations with variables. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to solve an equation using a variable. But before we can get started in today's lesson, we need to make sure that we understand what an equation is and what a variable is. Okay, let's go ahead and start. An equation is the same thing as a number sentence. So if I was to write 2 plus 3 equals 5, this entire number sentence is an equation because it has numbers on both sides of an equal sign. Now, a variable is used to represent a number, but it represents it using a letter. So you might see it as A, X, Y, or any of the other letters in our alphabet. So you might see an equation with a variable written as 2 plus A equals 5. And we're going to learn how to solve for this letter A today. To begin today's lesson, we're going to start with a word problem. Mike knows that it is an 8-mile hike from his house to the lake. He has already hiked 5 miles. How many more miles does he need to hike? So to start, we're actually going to be using bars to represent how many miles Mike has to go and how many miles he has hiked. So the first bar that I'm going to bring down represents 8 miles, and that's the complete distance from his house to the lake. The second bar I'm going to bring down represents the 5 miles that he has already hiked. Now we're using these to help us see how far he still has to go. So as you can see, our top bar has an equal amount of 8 miles, and our bottom bar represents the 5 miles that he's already hiked. So we're searching for this middle amount, and that's going to be our variable. So how we write this as an equation, we're going to say we know he's hiked 5 miles, plus we'll use the variable a mystery amount that he has not hiked yet, and we know that's going to equal a total of 8 miles in all. So we just wrote an equation using a variable. And now we're going to search and find out, what does A represent? What's the value of A? So if we know that we have 8 miles in all, and he's already hiked 5, he still has to hike 1, 2, 3 more miles. So we know that A has to have a value of 3. And to check our work, we're going to rewrite this equation using numbers. So we'll say 5 plus 3 equals 8 because we replaced this A for 3. And 5 plus 3 indeed does equal 8, which means we correctly solved this problem. Using visuals such as our number bars that we recently used is one way to be able to find a missing variable. But you can also find a missing variable by using an inverse operation. Inverse means opposite. So for our first problem, we have 4 times x equals 8. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So our goal, we are going to try to separate this x to find out what its value is. So we're going to use the inverse of multiplication, which is division, and divide our left and our right side by 4. Now, whatever you do to the left-hand side, you have to do to the right-hand side. So 4 divided by 4 gives us a value of 1, and 1 times x is going to equal x itself. 8 divided by 4 equals 2. So we know that x has a value of 2. And you always want to check your work, so we need to make sure that 4 times 2 equals 8. And it does. All right, let's go to our next problem. We have y minus 5 equals 10. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So we're going to add 5 to the left-hand side, and we're going to add 5 to the right-hand side to try to get y by itself. Now, this is going to cancel out to equal 0, and 10 plus 5 equals 15. So that means that y equals 15. And again, we always want to check our work, and we know that 15 minus 5 equals 10. So you can use visuals to check your work, or you can also use the inverse operation. Let's take a moment to go through some practice problems together. This would be a great time to pause your screen and practice on your own. All right, let's get started. So we're going to start with 3 times a equals 12. Now, since we're multiplying here, the inverse of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide the left-hand side by 3, and we're going to divide the right-hand side by 3. 3 divided by 3 gives us a value of 1, and 1 times a is just going to equal a. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So we know that a has a value of 4. And you always want to check your work, so we need to make sure that 3 times 4 equals 12. And it does. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next problem. X minus 3 equals 10. Well, the inverse of subtraction is addition, so we're going to add 3 to the left and add 3 to the right. Our 3's cancel out, and that gives us 10 plus 3 on the right, which has a value of 13. So x equals 13. Again, always check your work. So we need to know that 13 minus 3 equals 10. And it does. All right, last problem. Y divided by 2 equals 6. So the inverse of division is multiplication. So we're going to multiply the left-hand side by 2 and the right-hand side by 2. So these are going to cancel out. And 6 times 2 equals 12. So we know that y has a value of 12. And let's check our work. 12 divided by 2 does equal 6. So we have correctly solved each of these equations. Let's take a moment to review what you've learned in today's lesson. We learned 2 different ways that you can try to solve a variable in an equation. One way was using number bars so that we can show our whole amount, which in this case would be 8, show the amount that we already have gone or already have, which in this case is 2, and then we can try to find our missing variable, which is going to be the rest of the way. So we know that 2 plus a mystery number is going to give us a value of 8. We can write that also in an equation, 2 plus y equals 8. We also learned that you can use an inverse operation to solve a problem as well. So the inverse of addition is subtraction. And you need to make sure that you use this inverse operation on both sides. And our focus is to separate this variable here. So we know that y is equal to 6. And again, our last step, make sure you always check your work. So we know that 2 plus 6 equals 8.